Bum, bum, bum. Okay, now we're recording. All right. All right, so let's do it on Eclipse here. Okay, first thing you want to do, and I'll go slow so hopefully everybody can follow along. So go over here to File, and you can do New, and you can select Java Project. Okay, so File, and it's a little slippery with the controls. Okay, but there it is, Java Project. And so we're going to create a project in Java. That's just, again, that's going to be a set of file folders for all the stuff we want to do. Any packages we create, we can keep them in our project. Okay, so first thing, we got to give it a name. And I would say let's not even waste time being creative. Let's just do IDS 201 Fall 2020. So right there at the top in project name, type that. If you want to type in something else, that's fine. But yeah, I'll go with that. These other things should already be in place. So if you installed the same version of the JDK I said, then you should have Java Standard Edition 1.8 as your basic option. If you have some different version of Eclipse or a different JDK, you might have a different version which could create some headaches for you. So try to do the drop-down menu and grab 1.8 because that's what we want to do here. And then the other things you can just leave as is. You can just go with the standard options, and we're going to hit finish. Boom. So the only thing you should need to touch is the project name. And then watch over in the Package Explorer, boom, here now we have our project. Okay? All right, so once we have our package, right, our project, if we wanted to, you could poke in there. So poke on the thing, and you'll see there's one folder for source code. That's the code we're going to write. And another for the system library. Basically, this is all of the Java overhead. So things like Java versions and everything else that gets involved in our project. This is all just a bunch of overhead. So you never need to go digging around in the system library in IDS 201. Okay, you can, but every project has its own one that basically says, here's the way Java is going to work for this particular project. It's metadata. Okay, so click on the source folder, SRC, click on that to highlight it, and we can create a couple of new classes. So your class button, if you want to, you could create it over here, right? There's a class thing, but the easy one is just to click over here. So it looks like a green circle, and if you look real close, you can see there's a yellow plus in the corner of it. Go ahead, click on that, boom, and it'll bring up a dialog box for a new class. So first thing up here, it'll say the source folder and the package. Leave those blank. I mean, leave those with their defaults. If you create new packages, you're going to create more headaches for yourself in the short run. And we're going to give it a name. So the vision I have for today's project is we're going to create a simulated combination of a server application and then all of the individual customer data that's running on it. Okay, so that's what we're going to do. So for the name, let's give it the name Server App. Okay, and notice you can't put spaces in a class name. That'll create problems. So you'll get, if you try to do it with a space in the middle, you'll see this error up at the top, type name not valid, type name server app, blah, blah, blah. So no spaces. And with a few exceptions, no oddball characters either, just letters and numbers, and it has to start with a letter. Okay. And then we can also click this checkbox for the main method. That way we automatically include a main method, which is the launching point for our program. Okay, so at this point we can be finished. We've created the shell for our class. So we go ahead, click finish, boom. And there it is. Now we have this, right? This server app.java. So .java, those are your source code files. When they get compiled, they eventually go as a different extension, like .class. Okay. So I'm going to take a pause here, and we're going to see how things are doing. And we're going to share the screen. And here we are back in Eclipse. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to update it so the window is a little bigger, so the font is a little bigger. So if you go to Preferences under Window, and then Preferences, you can change the font. So font is under General, and you scroll down, okay, go to Appearance, Colors and Fonts, And there it is. So the one I want to use, right? So there's a bunch of options here. But if I just do basic, okay, scroll down to the end of the basic list and text font, right? That's just going to be everything I do. I can make it a little bigger. I can put it in size 16 so it's easier to see. Okay. Boom. So that's much easier to read, I hope. And if you want to, you can apply that same sort of thing throughout your entire IDE. But for me, I'm just doing it on the main coding area. Okay. So this, I'm going to put in some comments here. So comments in Java, anytime you see this double / any text that follows it on the same line will not be functional code. It'll just be notes that get stored that people can see, but it doesn't actually do anything. Okay, so I'm going to do here up at the top, this class is for an application running on a server, right? And I'm going to add simulated because obviously I'm not really running this on a server. Now, what we're doing here, we're having some kind of application where users connect to the server, log in, and somehow access their data. Okay, so I'm going to create another class for the customer data. So likewise, we do new Java class. I'm going to press that button. And in the name for that, I'm just going to call it customer. I'll call it even customer, I don't know, customer account. We'll call it that. Customer account doesn't need a main method. Customer account is not going to be executable. Okay, so I'm just going to click finish then. Boom. And this is my customer account. So I'm going to say customer account has a few things. First, it's going to have some data fields. The first one is going to be a string, which will be username. Okay, and after that, I'm going to do another comment saying string is a data type that's a big slug of text. Okay, that's the main thing about a string. That's the kind of data it holds. And you can do various text manipulation operations on it, but a string is a kind of object that holds a bunch of text. I'm going to do another bit of data. I'm going to call it an int, and I'm going to do credits. Okay, so int is a data type that's an integer about between plus or minus 2 billion. Okay, so that's what an int is. An int is another data type. And here I'm going to create two methods. So I'm going to do two things. So I'm going to do, actually I'll do a few of them. I'll do one that's set username. And the void here just means it doesn't return any value. So I'm going to have this method accept a string name. So I'll put in a little note here. This method accepts a string and applies it to the object's username field. Okay, so here I'm going to say this dot username equals name. Okay, so whatever this particular object is, its username field is going to be reset to match this name field that got sent along when the method was called in the first place. Likewise, I'm going to do another one here. This method will return a string. It's going to be get username, and it's not going to require any sort of input. Okay, so this method retrieves the username field from the object. Okay, so for this one, I'm just going to write return this dot. I got some code problems. This dot username. Try it again. There we go. Okay, so we have a few simple methods there. We'll add in more in a moment. Okay, so this is the basic stuff right now that a customer account can do. So I'm going to hit save. You notice, by the way, there's a little star here next to this. that means that I've made changes that have not been saved yet. So you can hit Control S to save, and then it's done. Do the same thing on server app. So the very first thing I'm going to do in server app, I'm going to create a new server app object. Well, you know what? For starters, I'm just going to create a customer object, but this makes less sense in the long run, but I'll do it for one just to demonstrate. So I'm going to create a new customer. Let me overwrite this comment here. Create a new customer object and assign it a name. Okay, so I'm going to create it. So I'm going to say customer C1 is a new customer. And then I'm going to say C1 dot set username Joe. Whereas, oh, customer account. That's what I got to do. That's why it doesn't like that. Customer account and customer account. Okay. So this statement creates a new customer account object. Which will be referred to as C1. Okay, so that means as far as Eclipse is concerned, right, C1, well, it knows what C1 is. I'm going to put that on a new line. It knows that anytime in the scope of this method, I refer to this thing called C1, the IDE will know, oh, you mean that's that customer account object. Because up here, right, you created this object called C1. And the basic syntax is the type, which is going to be a customer account object, the name, which is going to be C1, and then the format, what's called a constructor method call. So I'm going to basically tell Java, create this new object. Okay, and that's a very standard format for creating new objects. We'll talk about all this when we do the lecture slides early next week. The next step here, C1.set username. So the syntax here, for object C1, which we just created, call its set username method. Okay, so the syntax there is going to be object and then a dot and then method name and then within that arguments. Okay, so arguments are the values we send along with a method call. And here I haven't actually specified a method that takes that, so I'm going to have to create that one presently. The dot notation is very important. The standard thing of a dot, it means, I'm going to write that in here. The dot means the thing on the right belongs to the thing on the left. So C1 dot set username means call the method for C1 and only C1. Okay, so if we have a bunch of customer account objects created, we would still be saying just do it for C1, don't do it for all of them. Okay, I'm going to go back to customer account here. I'm going to add in a constructor method. Okay, so I'm going to start with that. I'll put that here on the top because by convention we put constructor methods at the top. So customer account. This is the format for a constructor method. Just the class name with no return type. Okay, so in here, have this, and I also have, I'm going to accept a string. So string name. And then I'm going to say this dot username equals name. So just like in our previous method that I wrote down, set username, this will create the new object with the value from name as the username. Okay, let's see what we don't like here. So we're going to do that. Doesn't like that because there's no longer a valid type. So here we're going to call him Fred. Okay. Now right now this is not doing anything. So I'm going to have a couple quick things to do something. And then we can talk and have questions and chat and all that. Okay, so here I'm going to call a method to print C1's username. Okay, so I'm going to do the system.out.println method, which prints text to what's called the console. The console is a little window where you can display these kind of results. So I'm going to call system.out.println. I just do C1. Okay, I'll say object created, name is C1.get username. Okay, and that's going to display that little message. You'll say object created, name is, in this case, it will be Fred. And I'll add a period at the end. Okay. Afterwards, after we've done this other stuff, we can do this. We can do the same thing. So again, call a method to print C1's username to verify the change. Okay, so again, since here the sequence is I created the object, I gave it a name, I display the name, verify that it's correct, I change the name to Joe, and then I print out the name here and verify that in fact the change successfully happened. Okay, so we're going to run this and hopefully it's good. Okay, so if you want to run something, there's a very quick one here. There's an arrow we can just hit. It says run. This little green arrow here looks like a play button. We'll do it. Let's see what happens. Boom. Oh my goodness, there it is. And so this is the console window, which generally when you produce any text, it automatically happens down there. You'll also notice the key thing over here. It says terminated. That means that the program has completed running. It's done. If it were still running, you'd see this little square here would be bright red. That would be the stop button if you wanted to stop it. Okay, so I'm going to pause this. We'll see what people have to say. A bit more. And we'll share in Eclipse. And I'll talk a little bit to close this out. So, you should not understand Java at this point, right? This is the first week. This is the first time I'm introducing anything to you. You get a little feel for how the syntax should look, right? So what we have, if there are parts of a program, generally they're encased in squiggly brackets, or the technical term is braces. A typical program will involve a series of method calls or other operations. We've learned about comments. And all we've done here, we've created one application, right? This is our main application, so it has the main method that runs. This is where the program starts. And within the main method, these are all these other method calls we're doing. So basically, we're branching out. We're branching out to this customer account constructor. We're doing some stuff in that method, and then the execution flow returns here. We call this system.out.println method. It does some stuff to print text, and then the execution flow returns back here. We call C1's set username method. It does some stuff, and then the execution flow returns back here. We call the system.out.println again. It does its stuff. The execution flow returns here. There's nothing else left in this main method, so the program ends. Okay? So what we've learned is just a little bit of how Java looks, what the appearances are, some basic stuff about flow. We've talked a little bit about classes and objects. Okay, so we've created 2 classes. We're basically doing the mechanics for that within each class. So in server app, we have this main method. In customer account, we have a few methods. We introduce the concept of a constructor, have a couple methods over here that do some stuff. We have some data fields. We'll build on this as, you know, in the next lecture. But for now, all we're doing, we're introducing these basic concepts so that on Monday, when I lecture about classes and objects and methods and stuff, it doesn't seem totally abstract. That's what I'm hoping for. Okay, so this is where I'm going to stop the recording, and then we'll answer some questions and call it a day.